Welcome everyone to Managing Madness with Adrian and
Carolyn.
awesome.
To be here.
Yeah, I'm nervous. And this will be a really common theme. June, this is our first time doing this. This will be our first episode. So actually, yeah, why did you say yes so willingly to do a podcast?
With you, I mean, I think even when we were just kind of brainstorming this the other day and hearing your kind of like the catchphrase of how we have such different mindsets and worldviews and world experiences, but then also have these common values that have just like run its course through our friendship over the last 20 years. So, and I mean, and we've talked on and off for years about trying to collaborate again and do something like this. So when you brought up this opportunity, I was like, this actually, like, I've got some shifts going on in my life. I have a little bit more space than I have in the last couple years. And I love working alongside you. So I'm excited to see what comes of it.
It's actually wild because, as you said, that I started my professional career with you, co-teaching with you. So it's interesting, to come around this, almost 20 years.
20 years?
Yeah.
Or are we still 12? I don't understand. It's so weird.
I'm going to be laughing a lot because I hope people can see just the differences between us. I usually don't laugh as much. I do, and I'm with Carolyn. But even just our backgrounds right now, if you can just tell of how busy her background is and how simple mine is. That may evolve and change with time, but right now we're going with white.
It works. It's working. Yeah. I'm going with, I don't know, butter, pool table.
With
plants.
life.
New plants. I've like really become a new plant mom and I'm in love. So my kids are like, you can't go anywhere in this house without running into a plant. And I'm like, they help you breathe better. They're good for mental health. You're welcome.
Awesome.
So, and that really has been from day one, right? We talked about just how opposite we were on so many, and we're both a little competitive. So we definitely have a lot of similarities.
Oh, we're so competitive.
And he always beats me by like 2 points.
I wasn't going to mention that, but that's also true.
I'm like, what's your credit score, huh? I mean, we're talking like
my credit score, yeah.
We're like every test that we would take, we're like, why did they wrong? But anyway,
even the time we played darts, that one time I literally just beat you by like a couple points or something.
Yes. So, anyways, but then, so like, I mean, I'm a 6'3" white woman, which you can't exactly see through this situation, and obviously he is not.
Yes, I'm 5'8", Mexican American. We'll discuss also like identity because that's a weird term that I usually just consider myself brown. But also yes, yeah. So I remember at one point we also had a list of all our differences.
I might still have it in a file somewhere.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm so glad we can't see my house. So that will be something we will keep from audiences. That's also why there's a background. So a big thing for me in regards to a podcast was, so I do a lot of trainings around trauma these days. And we'll discuss that in the podcast later on in future episodes. But one thing that has consistently come up for me is people really connecting with a lot of my stories and feeling that I'm very vulnerable in a lot of ways in what I ultimately share. And what's been interesting has been, it's not really me trying to be vulnerable. It's me just giving up on trying to fit in with social norms and what I thought I ultimately had to be in a lot of ways. And I'm just kind of being myself more these days, which is just hopefully honest in a lot of, in the things I do and the things I say. And with that, I hope to really connect with a lot of people who have felt ultimately alone in life, who may feel that, I don't think anybody else experiences this. Turns out it seems like I've experienced a lot. And I seem to be able to connect with, a lot of people who have felt alone. And I think that's something that we both discussed, and even why it's entertaining for us to do it. Being so different is a goal that hopefully we can, listeners will find something in us that they can identify. And one of the big things that with this, which is why it's called Managing Madness, is we don't have our shit together by any means.
I try, guys.
Yeah.
Valiant attempt around here.
And but I also want to say, in a lot of ways, a lot of people around us think we do really have our shit together. And it isn't, and unless we're, really vulnerable and actually, sharing it, that people will know. And one of the things I said as I was kind of describing the podcast to others is a lot of people seem to have solutions right now for things. We have our struggles.
Our struggles and our story.
Yeah.
So.
And a lot of that, what we hopefully want to communicate is that just the uniqueness of life, that really everyone comes with their own layers and perspectives, our own traumas, all that, that there really is no way to live life. There is no there's no book, there's no script. You're a parent. I know there's no book on that. Like, I mean, there's a lot of books on parenting, but yeah.
All the answers. I'm like,
right.
Oh my gosh, the flying by the seat of our pants.
Yeah. So that whole idea, and I know one of the things we'll discuss like later is growing up, I thought I would have it all figured out as an adult, or I thought there were scripts that, I just need to do this or that.
Yeah, I think we grew up in a time too where the adults in our lives, for the most part, I mean, there's probably exceptions to it, but we thought they had it all together. Like they presented like they had it all together. They, there wasn't a huge conversation surrounding struggles or, mental health, and
oh no, yeah.
So you just kind of looked. I just assume. I remember one of the biggest changes in my life was seeing my parents as people. Because I'd just kind of been my whole life just seeing them as like mom and dad, and they like had the answers and they knew what to do. And I reflect on that a lot, especially in parenting, of like, are my kids like perceiving me the same way? And maybe they are, but I don't know.
What I think I've tried to learn or try to accept in a lot of ways is, if I am conscious of it, I'm probably not as bad of it at it than I think I am. Going back to parenting and the concept of, my parents weren't necessarily conscious of that idea of what they were saying necessarily. And I've actually, in talking to my mom, I actually have a really close relationship with my mom now. My dad and I have the best relationship we've had, but that's also in a very distant way, and that'll come up in later episodes. It's a good. I love my dad. I have all respects, but it's different than how I'm learning to live my life in a lot of the ways in which we're talking about, like healing from things. So, and I know that wasn't a conscious thing as much in my parents, and I know one of the things my mother actually reminds me of, because she actually calls me her psychologist, is at one point I told her why she sees things so negatively, and she had never perceived of her being a negative person. Right. And to me, like, repeating that was like, are you kidding me? Like, you're not a negative person. Okay. And that kind of ultimately got her to reflect a lot. And I guess that was ultimately kind of the beginning of, our relationships in a lot of ways. I guess how she started to change perspectives. But now we really are able to have like a conversation. And I know now that we talk about things, she mentions how, mental health, yeah, it wasn't. And also too, as we discussed, our backgrounds, I'm first generation here. So my parents came here from Mexico. My dad, we're in our 40s. So just listeners, both of us are in our 40s. But my parents are old enough that they came here where they dealt with a lot of racism. So, and even thinking of that capacity, and this is something I actually discussed kind of in therapy, is I feel privileged to be in a generation where still dealing with, we still deal with racism these days. We're also in the United States, for context. Uh, but it's not the things my dad ultimately saw. Like, it's not, his physical safety and things, uh, were very much at risk in a lot of ways where, as I'm thinking and thinking just how much work therapy has been for me and how much work that has actually been, I I would find it challenging, or even in speaking in this space now too, it is challenging to balance that while also being a provider and doing things like that as far as like just paying the bills. And that's a lot of where all this comes into play, where it's just like the idea of, paying bills, having a career, having your job, being a parent. I'm not a parent. I have two lovely cats. But of just managing all that in this idea of how challenging that really is on so many levels.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It really is. Yeah. And another commonality that kind of came up as you were speaking, I feel like, I mean, with your mom, but then both my parents, really, just how much they have modeled just continual growth. My dad passed away almost 2 years ago now, but I was able to have just hard conversations with him and just reflective conversations, about each of our experiences with different things. And then same with my mom. My mom also, she lived with us for a year, several years ago, and just the healing that took place during then also was just, yeah, it's just, I hope I continue to model that for my kids, and I, and like living in a way, and even before, like even without kids, but like living in a way that somebody else could watch and be just not necessarily impressed, but and not inspired. I don't know what the word I'm thinking is, but like we're just trying to do the good thing, like good things at a good time for no reason other than just like to help, right? To
Mhm.
present, to I don't know. And it helped me finish my thoughts here. So this is where I need you.
Well, one where that kind of got me thinking is a sense of connection,
Yeah. Yeah.
connecting with people, because right now too, we're in such with social media, and that's another reason why doing a podcast, we know that's where a lot of people are on. This will be on YouTube. We know we'll have clips. All the other social media really terrifies me, but we do want youth to kind of hear that adults don't have it all figured out as a lot of us present. And it's a learning experience. And I know I learn a lot from youth, but having that connection with people, maybe not inspire them, maybe not,
Yeah.
impress them.
Yeah. Connect, relate. Yeah, that's definitely
Yeah.
more the word. Just, yeah.
Uh,
Desire to be in relationship and community. And we're about to get into a real ugly year ahead again. I mean, I think there's a lot of beautiful things coming too, but politically, the stage right now, I mean, things are gonna ramp up. So it should be really
yeah.
fun to kind of navigate this together as all
Uh,
that progresses.
yeah. I mean, I am 2020 will be its own episode for sure.
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
but I haven't been the same since. There's so much that even ever since 2020 for me, every year has been just intense. It's been getting better, I would
Yeah.
say, on a lot of work on, on myself, but it's just been intense, and I agree with you. I don't anticipate that calming down any.
No.
So in that
Yeah.
space, we
Especially with
hope to grow.
yeah, post COVID just feels kind of hard and heavy, but then at the same like kind of hopeful and yeah, just kind of all the dichotomies coming together.
Right. And that's something we hope to do as we, eventually grow. Hopefully we can form a little community here where people can ultimately
Yeah,
connect, and not, again, we really don't want to be. I watch so many videos and podcasts on just different things. As I was thinking about this, and one of the big things that I struggle with personally, and that's why as we're going into connection, is so many there's so many videos out there that say, oh, all you need to do is this, and all you need to do this, or do this in your life, do that in your life, do that, and everything will change. And none of those sole things have worked for me.
Right.
Individually speaking,
Right.
it's,
Yeah, there's
there's a
like a
combo of things.
collective. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and we definitely, yeah, we would like to reiterate, we have no solutions. We only have our struggles and our stories, okay?
Yeah.
And sometimes
Yeah.
there's some fun stories.
And that,
And
yeah, and that's what we're hoping, is that people will be both entertained as well in that space. One of the things I will be talking about, is, my neurodivergence. I have the what I call the Triforce of sorts. I might need to edit that because I don't know if that term is copyrighted in video games. But the idea, that's it.
yeah.
But the ADHD, depression, and anxiety are things I've ultimately dealt with my entire life, but didn't know I was ultimately struggling with them until right around
We
when I
were working
met,
together.
yeah, Carolyn. So until my
Yeah.
adult life, that's something we will definitely also be discussing within
Yeah.
this podcast.
And
And
kind of interested, like along those lines, it really, neurodivergence is not my story. I've like been a type A performer. I mean, I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. I'm an over performer in some capacities. I'm like your typical firstborn, right? Like responsible, aware of others, like, yeah, right? Yeah, another thing there. Until 2021, and my world kind of fell apart, and I had a third and my final surrogate baby. I'd had two other of my own, so 5 pregnancies. And I remember being on the way to the doctor at my like 6 week post OB appointment or whatever it was, and like rehearsing in my head how I was going to convince her I was okay. Like, okay, like I'm okay. Like I get like things are hard and heavy, but like we're good. And I was like, I am not okay. Like, why am I trying to pretend I'm okay? Like this is, I mean, it's just been so much of my life is I'm okay. I'll figure it out. You can depend on me. Like I will be there. I like the phrase in the book of like everything's figure outable. That's kind of like my MO, but I was really struggling. So yeah, it was the first time I'd ever grappled with that. And then to think of people that spend their whole lives in that place, like just gave me just a new awareness and understanding and just compassion for. And I think I've been compassionate. I don't think I've got some people that might disagree, but for the most part, I think most people who interact with me or know me would agree that I'm compassionate. But anyways, so yeah, just kind of another little.
I would agree with that. And how you dropped so many of our different. So I'm the youngest, but I'm also the youngest by 14 years from the fifth. So I
Yeah.
kind of have an only child dynamic as
We call
well.
ourselves pleasant surprises, though.
Yes.
That's one of our commonalities. I was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
And so were you.
Yeah. I guess we really have to poll my parents though if it's pleasant or not. That's like debatable. Um, but yeah, that's one of the uh huge components, and one of the big shifts for me really in this last year has been, and we'll actually cover this in an upcoming episode, is switching between the concept that my healing had to be some sort of an answer and something that I could just go to and solve everything, versus a process that I actually had to move from, in which one of our largest differences, I think this would be accurate. I've always been very cerebral. Like a lot of my direction has had to be guided by my head, my logic, all that. Would you say you're more emotional in your direction?
Emotional necessarily in like crying all the time.
Right,
I
right,
feel
right,
like
right.
this bad rap, but no, but like in touch with my emotions, making decisions based on intuition and I mean, I try to be practical in my feelings, right? Like if I get to a place that I know when I'm being a little irrational. But yes, I would say for the most part,
Right.
I maybe like a combo of
Right.
yeah, but
We're
definitely more heart than head.
yes.
Yeah,
And definitely not saying emotional in a negative capacity.
yeah,
I'm super emotional. That will come out and
yeah,
we'll discuss that
yeah,
in the podcast. I am very emotional. I have a lot going in me. That kind of goes with the whole ADHD, depression, anxiety thing. Um, but I've always been more so driven and thought everything had to be more cerebral. And a lot of it, what I learned is part of that was a defense mechanism. We'll discuss things like patriarchy and things like that, tradition and backgrounds of things like that. I grew up in East LA, and certain things I ultimately had to learn for my survival, and I became very cerebral very young. And it wasn't until really this year through therapy that a lot of the things I ultimately thought I had solved, I'm actually now kind of fully dealing with, um,
yeah.
which is
Yeah,
wild.
and it's so yeah, I love the parallel too in our healing. I mean, I'm walking through a course at my church right now that's just been really intentional in having me look at my story, like my life story, and just wounds that I've experienced at the hands of my own choices and other people. And then kind of going to the differences. Like I'm from Scottsdale, Arizona, a little different than East LA. Remember the first time we went to go visit his family, we were in a car accident. Like, bless that girl's heart. She hit
Oh
us right
yeah.
into the freeway. We're like, well,
Yep.
he's like, welcome to home.
Yep. Literally exited the freeway and got rear-ended. Yep.
Yeah.
Hit by someone
Um,
without insurance, and it was just kind of a, let him
yeah.
go because it
Yep.
was raining. It happens, but it was quite the
Yeah.
introduction to
Welcome.
my area,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so funny. But I've had just such a different life experience being. I mean, I rode my bike when I worked in inner city LA. My mom's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, and she's like, "Never mind. They'll just look at you and think you're crazy." I've traveled the world by myself.
Yeah, I don't even have a
But anyway,
passport.
yeah. Do you
No,
not really?
where am I going? I'm not
I don't
going
know.
anywhere.
Where did I go?
As you can see, Carolyn can be very social. I'm, a hermit. But why, willing to entertain the social media world and, put ourselves out there is for that idea of potentially connecting, especially, younger viewers. But in speaking to this with other of our peers, people, adulting is hard. And that's one of the things where a lot of us are
Yeah.
realizing.
Just kidding. There are moments, but like, who's in charge around here? Yeah.
So you'll be able to join us on our journey. But thank you for joining us on the first episode. Hopefully, one of the great things about these episodes, hopefully, is if you are watching this episode, another one has already been filmed and will be soon able to come out. So something else is coming soon.
Yeah. I
So if you
appreciate that.
enjoyed us, yes, do the like, subscribe, all those components that we'll need to get familiar with.
Yeah,
But
for sure. And even if you didn't, give us another shot. Maybe we'll win you over. Come on. Just takes a little time. Yeah. No, I'm excited.
Awesome.
All right.
So
We'll talk
with
to you
that,
soon.
yes, thank you all. Wishing you all peace, love, and power, and hopefully see you next
Yes.
time.
All right.